All right, Alice, I know you got a couple more poems here. One that sounded interesting to me was the one about the haunted.
Uncle Marion explains
Yeah,
why he won't live in the house that he
yeah.
inherited. My father's grandfather was white and his grandmother was mulatto, so you had mixes of color in there, which you need to know for this. Uncle Marion explains why he won't live in the house he inherited. Spirits walk through that house, restless like trees before rain. Maybe it's Mama with skin the color of bread left in the oven. I called her old African to her face and she cried. I ran and let deep woods cover me, stayed till dark chased me home. Maybe it's Daddy, pale like bed sheets, pale like me, excuse me, standing at the door when I got home. Tell your mama you're sorry, he said, and beat me. I said the words, but they didn't come from inside where it matters. Spirits walk through that house, weave through rooms like soft breaths during sleep. Spirits scrub floorboards, whoosh at windows, chill the air in July to January. Spirits stare at me when I go in, show themselves behind my eyes, waiting for me to sleep, waiting till I ain't looking.
Hmm. There's some really neat lines in that.
I never met Uncle Marion, but he probably would have been something else, as Aunt Jane was and as my father were. Very outspoken.
Is it difficult writing about family, even ones that maybe you didn't meet?
This wasn't difficult because that's the only thing I remember. We used to go visit Aunt Jane, take my father down to visit, because Daddy moved to Pittsburgh to work in the steel mills when he was in his 20s. And my mother's family was there, so, they met there. But so from time to time, we take Daddy back to Stafford to visit his mother, my grandmother. And they'd sit around and talk, and I met Aunt Jane. And so somewhere along the line, from time to time, a family member would come in to the conversation, and she mentioned Uncle Marion. And Daddy had said that Uncle Marion wouldn't live in the house. He was the child that inherited the house, the family house. The others built their own houses, but Uncle Marion wouldn't live in it. He built his house next to it. And Daddy said that's because he said it was haunted. And so when I mentioned that to Aunt Jane, my father's sister, she said, wasn't anything the matter with the house, that was just his meanness coming out. And so that's where I got the idea about Uncle Marion, why he won't live in the house. This is his take. What he said was why he wouldn't live in the house.
Isn't it funny how poetry, it starts as this idea, and then it goes over here, and you end up with something
that you did not start with.
Yeah.
It just kind of goes on its own. Of course, the writing does too. I just know when I do the fiction, I know where it's going to end up, but I don't know how it's going to get there.
So there are surprises involved in both.
Right. You don't know. You have different twists and turns, and the last thing you want in both genre is for it to be predictable.
Right.
And you don't want anybody to read your book and when they get to the end, oh yeah, I knew that was what was going to happen.
But it's not predictable to you, so how can it be predictable?
That's
your imagination
right. So
working
you
behind your
try
back.
not
Yeah.
to make it predictable. I remember reading a book, and there was like about a quarter left, and I was waiting for her to put in something else, some problem or something, and there wasn't any. And I said, boy, I can't believe, she wasted all of that space without doing anything with it.
Do you find, because you write fiction and these stories, do you find yourself being more critical maybe of a novel or a television show or movie because you write?
No, not really, because if I'm reading somebody's fiction, I will spend more time reading it than I would have if I didn't write, because I know it's difficult to do a story, and it's just as difficult to write a bad story as to write a good story. My mother used to walk us to the library.
That's where we were.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're talking miles to the library. Andrew Carnegie built the free libraries all around the Pittsburgh area
Right.
because he felt guilty for the money he was getting from the steel workers. Every 2 weeks, we'd go down there and we'd take the books out. And my sister read through all of Nancy Drew. I don't remember what I read then, but I know in high school I read through all of the fiction that we had. And I remember I'd go say, Mr. Ishki, what have you got for me now? What have you got for me to read? I read The Good Earth, and we're talking, the Shoes of the Fisherman, the really heavy, Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal. I wanted some heavy stuff to read. So I always read, but, and that was, they didn't have any, I don't think if they did have romance novels then, we weren't allowed to read them, but they had magazines. They had romance magazines, with the stories. True Story was one of them, and I forget what the others were.
There are a lot of classics that are pretty much romance stories.
I say a lot of mine, like this one, I say it's a romance, but I would say it's probably more suspense with maybe romantic elements in it. Because there's some heavy stuff in there, some deep stuff.
What are some of the best books you've ever read?
The Big Fisherman, which is about Peter from the Bible. Dr. Hudson's Secret Journal, and that was made into a movie. This is before all of your time. Movie with Rock Hudson and Dr. Hudson, and these are all fiction. Dr. Hudson used to do different charitable things for people. He kept a record in the journal, but nobody knew he was the one that did it. And so it was about the things that he did to help others. And The Good Earth, Pearl Buck, anything by Pearl Buck. I loved it. Heavy stuff. Because I found out the thicker the book, the more interesting the story. Because there's more in it. There's more in it,